Welcome to Breathe with Jennie, Yoga and Movement. I'm here today to give you a little tour of what it's like to have a private session with me. Hi.
Hello.
So here we are in the studio. When you come to see me, you'll come in my front door and down the stairs and down to the lower level of my house. I'm going to be recording a video soon, so you'll actually see exactly what that looks like, so you don't have to wonder, what door do I go in, or anything like that. So that's coming soon. But for today, John is here to be my private yoga student. And what will happen when it's your first session with me, you'll come down, we'll sit in chairs, I have a little clipboard, and I'll ask you a few questions. I'll ask you, why are you here? What goals do you have? It might be you'd like some better shoulder strength or leg strength. Maybe you'd like to become a little more flexible. I'm not here really to help people, bust out a handstand or something like that, or get their feet behind their heads or anything along those lines, but maybe you'd like to be able to, back out of your driveway or a parking spot and twist and turn your neck, maybe with a little bit more ease, or perhaps just even bending over to tie your shoes or reaching up on a high shelf to grab something. Your body's a little stiff. With some regular movement that I can show you, you can find that would be a little bit easier for you. Some folks like to come, they're just looking to de-stress. I have actually lots of folks that come here for that reason. And in that case, we still will take some gentle movement. That can actually be stress relieving, especially if you connect to your breath, which is a big part of what I do, is remind you to breathe. We can do guided meditations. And then after every session, everyone will either take a seat or lie down if they want to and just have a few minutes to rest. I think that's super important at the end of a class and at the end of a session. So that's something else that you'll get a chance to do if stress relief is something that you're looking for. So we'll talk about goals. I'll then ask if you have any injuries that I need to be mindful of. I am not a doctor. I am not a physical therapist. I have studied anatomy as it relates to yoga movement. So I will have people say, I got a reconstructed knee, or I have arthritis, or I have experiencing some low back pain, anything along those lines. And I can at least suggest to you some movements for your body that might feel good or feel better. You're always welcome to check with your doctor before pursuing any further movement, just to make sure. But that's just something that you should know, that I am pretty comfortable with people who come with a variety of either persistent pain issues or former surgeries, etc. So we'll talk about that. And then depending on what you have said, we'll move into some movement or some breathing or some rest. Now, before we went live here, I asked John what he wanted to focus on, and he wanted to focus on his hips. So that's an area of tightness and discomfort in so many of us, especially when so many of us sit for a large portion of our workday, or we spend a lot of time driving. We're in this position. So I'm going to just show you and show him a couple of things that he can do. Practice it here, and then I'm hoping after this he'll go practice this on a regular basis. So, John, stand on up. We'll move the chairs. You'll find if you come and meet with me that we use the wall a lot. A lot of folks get nervous about their balance, and I do not expect people to come onto a mat and immediately start to go onto one foot or take any sort of movements without feeling really comfortable. So I start almost everyone at the wall. And if you're one of those folks that's like, balance, it's easy peasy, then of course we can just come to the mat and work on that. But I'm going to have you come to them all. We're going to start with some hip mobility circles. Basically, this is just taking your hip in all directions. And we always start slow. We start gently, mindfully, and then he can start to build up if the exercise feels good. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to ask you to do is place your hand close to the wall. This is so that you don't have to worry at all about whether or not you feel steady on your feet. And then you're going to put most of your weight in the leg that's closest to the wall. Okay? And then this outer hip, the hip that's closest to the middle of the room, is the one you're going to be working on. So bring your opposite hand to your hip. And then I'd like you just to draw your leg up, turn it out, and send it back. And then bring it back up. And just continue with that movement. A little bit of softness in the standing leg. So there's really nothing good about locking your knee. And then what I will do is walk around and just see if his body is compensating by doing something that maybe feels best for him, but maybe isn't maximizing the movement. And I do see that when he sends his leg back, that he is tilting forward a little bit. There's nothing inherently wrong with that movement, but he's not getting the most out of the circles. So I'm going to suggest that you try to be aware and stay upright as much as you can when you take these circles. Maybe just do one more. This can be a lot of work for someone that's not used to taking this movement. And then go ahead and lower the leg down. So that's one example of something that I'm looking for. And the beauty of having a one-on-one session is you have my undivided attention. All eyes are on you, like it or not, so that I can make sure you're just trying to get the most out of the pose. I've had students that come and say, that just doesn't feel good. We then work with that. Okay, we'll move on to something else. In a class, you might not have a chance to speak up and say that to me, and you might just have to do whatever it is we're doing, or wait, of course. But in a one-on-one session, he could have stopped me immediately, and we would have tried something else. I have such a large toolbox of poses to try. So that would be side one. I would always have him at least try it on side two, unless for some reason he had a knee that was giving him trouble. And maybe we just wouldn't do side two because it was going to hurt his knee more than help his hip. Okay, so that's one example of a standing pose. If you are someone that does not like to get up and down off the ground, we can do an entire session standing or seated in a chair, or maybe a little bit of both. I also have folks that want to spend the entire hour in a seat. But I'll make sure you get some movement just so that you don't get tired of sitting the whole time. John, I know, can get down onto the ground, so I'm going to have him get down onto the ground for just one more pose to show you. And this one's pretty familiar if you've ever had physical therapy or taken some yoga. This is a reclined version of pigeon, and this is another hip influencer. So I'm going to ask John, bend your knees, place your feet on the mat. And then for his right hip, I'll have him cross his right ankle over his left thigh. See that your neck is as relaxed as possible, and your shoulders. A lot of us start to tense up in the areas of the body that we really don't want to be working here. So inviting some softness there. And then notice your right hip. Lots of folks feel lots of sensation right here. Are you feeling anything? No. John is not feeling anything. That's fine too. Lots of things we can do to add sensation. I always like to start though at the beginning and then build up, as opposed to putting your body in a position that could be too intense and then trying to back off. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, so for John, I'm going to suggest that you lift your left foot and place your foot on that block, and tell me if that has changed it. It has, okay. And if it hadn't, there are about 5 or 6 other things that I can suggest. I can almost always find some way so that you can feel some sensation in that right hip. What we're working on here is connective tissue, and it takes time for that area of the body to respond. So usually we linger here for a bit. Some folks it takes longer than others. So that's just another example of something that we can do to work on hips. So when you're ready, John, go ahead and uncross your right ankle, scoot the block out of your way, and then take your feet wide on the mat, knees are still bent, and then see what it's like to let your knees drift from side to side. The way I had his body set up, he was getting some good external rotation of his hip, similar to when he brought his leg up and turned it out. And then by adding this kind of windshield wiper action, we've added some internal rotation, which is also like sending your leg back. Now, this doesn't feel good for everyone. I have folks where this bothers their knees. In that case, I would say, please don't do that, and we'll think of something else. So then he will come to stillness. Pretend that we've had an entire hour together of working on whatever you'd like, and then I would conclude your session with just a brief period of rest. This is called Shavasana, Savasana. It's constructive rest, and I do encourage each and every person who comes to see me to have just a brief amount of time to find a pose that's comfortable for you. It might be lying down. It might be better if he was sitting up, maybe up against the wall or even in a chair, but just something to allow your body to settle and breathe and rest. In my one-on-one private sessions, I leave the room. I go around the corner so you can have some true rest and not worry about me hovering over you. So please know that I do leave the room. And then when the Shavasana is over, and that lasts anywhere from 2 to maybe 5 minutes, maybe longer if you would like it to be, 15 minutes. It can be whatever you'd like. And then I usually ring some bells, quiet bells, and then I'll ask John to roll onto one side or the other. Doesn't matter to me. Bending your knees a little, maybe bending your knees a lot. Just taking a few moments here on your side to ensure your blood pressure returns to normal. It looks like he could have benefited from a blanket underneath. Why don't you rest your head on your lower arm? And then, John, bring your right hand to the mat, kind of by your heart center. And then use that hand and then your other arm to press yourself up to a seat. And I encourage you to move slowly. Probably the only time living in Northern Virginia that someone will tell you, please move slowly. So then we'll wrap up. I'm usually on my mat. Oops, can you scoot down? He will be on his mat. I don't usually sit on the mat with the person. And then face me. And then this is how I close. I close class this way and I close my sessions. Usually not sitting this close, but I know him. And then I invite you to bring your hands to heart center and maybe let your thumbs rest there. This is a hand gesture, a mudra of gratitude. And so I will ask you to take a moment to thank yourself for taking time to take care of yourself, for perhaps being grateful for what your body can do. And then I thank you for sharing your time with me. The last thing I do is I say, the light in me sees and honors the light in you, which in Sanskrit is namaste. So, namaste. Namaste. That would conclude our session. I would then check in with the student and say, how was that? Is there something that you would like to work more on, something that you really would rather skip next time? I'll make some notes, and then I usually send the person home with some homework to work on when we're not together. And then I also check in with you maybe once or twice during the week to say, hey, have you had a chance to try that hip mobility circle? Or how's your low back feeling after class the other day or after our session the other day? Sometimes I'll actually record a video for people who are more visual, and I'll shoot that your way, and then you can actually watch it and know exactly what it is that you need to do. So that is a very brief introduction to what private sessions are like here at Breathe with Jennie. Would love to see you sometime soon. Bye.